Welcome back to Smothered and Covered in Blood, the anthology of Southern horror served up in the form of a podcast. Florida wouldn't be the state it is today if it weren't for Disney World, but before Mickey and his pals took over, Orlando was a swampy jungle. For this week's episode, we're fortunate enough to have a true life journal that documents the cryptid past of Central Florida. I can't reveal how we received this, but I can assure you, Disney officials don't want you to know the true history of the creature from the Seven Seas Lagoon.
The concept of bearing away the past isn't new. But despite some people's best efforts to hide history, the truth usually has a way of emerging. Very influential businessmen never wanted this journal to see the light of day, yet it has still found its way out into the open world. It was buried for years within the infamous Disney vault, but it was smuggled out by an intrepid cast member just for your entertainment.
The following are entries from the Lost Hunting Journal of Hank Handspike.
October 19th, 1969, 10 p.m. I was interrupted by the doorbell this morning while preparing for my hunting trip in Roscommon. It was a suited gentleman who claimed he was a representative for the Walt Disney Company. He said he had a unique job opportunity for me, but I informed him I was retired and not interested. The fool stuck his foot in the door when I tried to close it. I put my weight into shutting it far more than I needed to. He didn't squeal, even though his foot must have been on the verge of breaking. I respected him for that. So I let him in and told him he could pitch his offer while I drank my coffee, but to make it snappy because I'm a fast drinker. Turns out he's part of the team building that theme park boondoggle bullshit down in Florida. He said there's a unique hunting opportunity in the area that I was recommended for the job by General Joe Potter himself, based on my time in Panama. I only met General Potter once while stationed down around the canal, but that legend about me killing the ocelot that lived near the base, that must have left quite the impression. Wish I'd taxidermied that one. It was a real beaut. The suit said there was a mysterious predator in play around their Florida construction site, and they needed the best to take it out. He made me an offer, a substantial amount to be honest, and said all travel and expenses would be paid for by Mr. Mickey Mouse himself. I told him if he wanted the best hunter around, he came to the right place, but I needed to think it over. I have to admit, I was immediately intrigued by the offer to hunt in this new location for new prey, but I wanted to squeeze in for a few more bucks if possible. I made him wait in silence while I checked the weather report in the newspaper. I saw rains in the forecast for Saginaw for the next week, so I knew my planned hunting trip was going to be bust. And the last thing I wanted was to be stuck at home. So I told him my price, and he immediately agreed to it. He said to pack clothes tonight and we'd fly down tomorrow, and there was no need to pack any of my guns, as everything I'd need would be purchased after arrival. Still bringing my old trusty emergency kit, though. Never thought I'd go hunting in Florida. Too bad Janie's not still around. She always wanted to take a Florida vacation. I hope I can bag a gator while I'm there. October 20th, 1969, 2:33 p.m. We flew out of Saginaw this morning on a Disney corporate jet. I've missed deployment on a moment's notice. Sure, it's not wartime, but at least it's something to do. I thought I would be happy knowing where I'd be each week now that I was retired, but it can't compare to the excitement of being thrust into the unknown just because you're the best at your job. If only Janie could see me now. Paid by the Disney company to go hunting, she'd kick the bucket all over again. I tried to pry the suit for additional info, but he was tight-lipped. All he wanted to talk about was this Orlando place. He sounded like a damn tour guide. I don't remember much of what he said. Something about how it's a town in the middle of the state near the northernmost point of the Florida Everglades. He also tossed in some annoying factoid about how the origin of the town's name is in question, as some say it's named after a dead man, and some say it's named after a Shakespeare character. Either way, I hate it. Can't say I was too fond of this representative. In addition to him being a dull conversationalist, I saw the way he judged my clothes. I don't know how anyone expects a widower to have clean clothes laying around at a moment's notice. Guys like that don't know the bush from their tush. So while he was reeling off dumb facts about a no-name town while dressed in a suit that fit him perfectly, I sat there in my LL Bean duck boots still caked in mud, flannel I'm not entirely certain when it was last washed, Sears blue jeans, and flicked out the dirt that was still underneath my fingernails from my last hunting trip. The moment he stopped talking, I pretended to nap in order to avoid any more conversation. We landed in a small airport in a town named Kissimmee. I pronounced it Kiss-a-me when I saw it on the sign, and it was promptly corrected and told it's pronounced Kissimmee. I didn't apologize for the mispronunciation. I didn't care. Based on my view during descent, there's barely anything here, so who cares what it's called? The humidity felt like a heavy, sopping wet blanket was tossed over me the moment I boarded the jet. Reminded me of Panama. A white Land Rover with a Walt Disney World bumper sticker slapped on the driver's side door was waiting on the tarmac to drive me to the site. It seemed excessive, but the need for a Land Rover immediately made sense. We went off-road and entered a veritable jungle that required four-wheel drive capabilities. The pathways were still unpaved and bumpy, despite the constant ingress and egress of heavy construction vehicles. The brush to our sides was thick with bushes and trees that limited the sightlines. The driver informed me the team was clearing out only a fraction of the 27,000 acres Mr. Disney bought in the area. My preconceived vision of Florida as nothing but palm trees and beaches was sorely mistaken. I was dropped off at a construction site where they're getting underway to drain the area called Bay Lake into a man-made lagoon a few thousand feet away. Sound like a waste of time and money to me. Money doesn't seem to be an issue for these Disney folk. I met with the G.I. Joes soon after arrival, Fowler and Potter. They were both dressed in dark dress slacks and monogrammed short-sleeved seersucker button-ups. It looked like they shared a barber as they both still had the close-cropped, standard military haircuts. They looked interchangeable, to be honest. General Potter shook my hand and said he remembered me from his time as governor of the Panama Canal Zone. I said it was an honor to serve with him again, but I must admit, I don't understand how any self-respecting man, a decorated veteran especially, can bring themselves to work on this kiddie crap. But maybe this is that next step for capitalism. We aren't fighting the Ruskies with bombs or guns yet, but we'll trounce communism until then with cartoons and amusement park rides. Regardless, they apprised me of the situation. Admiral Fowler explained that they were in the middle of one of the largest construction operations the U.S. has ever seen, as they were moving 7 million cubic yards of dirt and mud in order to construct this man-made lagoon they refer to as the Seven Seas Lagoon. They're making slow progress, however, as unexplained damage keeps occurring around the excavation. Digging equipment has been found broken or overturned upon workers' arrival in the mornings. Water pumps are beat to hell like someone wailed on with baseball bats. Hoses were ripped to shreds, shovels snapped in half, etc. Internal investigations have proven it's not thieves or hippies or disgruntled Orange Grove farmers. I asked to speak to the investigators, but was informed that was not possible at the moment. The leading theory is the damage is due to some sort of local animal they're not familiar with. This is based on the discovery of unidentified tufts of hair and horrible, unexplained stenches left at the sites in question. There's a lot of pasture land nearby that I noticed during the drive. I think the driver mentioned a local politician owned cattle in the vicinity, so it makes sense a predator would make its way to the area and might attack the machinery out of confusion. But that doesn't explain this supposed foul, musky smell the crew keeps reporting. Perhaps it's a side effect from mange. Gunshots interrupted our conversation. My instincts kicked in and I immediately looked for cover, but they assured me it was nothing to worry about. They informed me it was now protocol for everyone on site to carry firearms on them in order to shoot the countless snakes they encounter. They offered to drive me to my lodgings at a nearby motel so I could rest up, but I told them all I needed was a tent and a rifle, as I was ready to set up camp on site immediately. I'm now awaiting transport to a supply store in a place called Yeehaw Junction. The name alone gives me caution. October 20th, 1969, 6:15 p.m. I'm writing this during the drive back from Yeehaw Junction in order to preserve the information while it's still fresh. While purchasing supplies, the owner of the store asked if I needed any lima beans. Confused by the question, I asked, why would I want lima beans? In a thick southern accent, he said he thought I was hunting a skunk ape based on my supplies of a tent, 2 new hunting rifles, a pistol, ammo, battery-powered lantern, mosquito repellent, a bag of fresh Florida oranges, and this month's issue of Playboy. Paulette Lindbergh is on the cover. She reminded me of Janie. It'll be nice to sleep next to a Midwestern woman again. At least, I hope she's Midwestern. I asked what in the world is a skunk ape. He didn't go in depth, only said it was a local legend about a tall, smelly creature that was rumored to live in the wilderness and like to eat lima beans. He must have noticed an unusual expression on my face, because he said it was just a joke he liked to play on tourists. I asked him how he knew I wasn't from the area, and he said my skin was too pale for me to have been in Florida that long. I asked if he had any more information about the creature, but he didn't. He did, however, opine that he thought it was based on a Seminole legend. Realistically, I know such a creature doesn't exist, but local lore may give me a clue as to what I'm dealing with down here. I need to ask around tomorrow about any possible connection to a Seminole tribe. I bought a can of lima beans just in case. October 21st, 1969, 3:07 a.m. I was awoken by a wretched smell. It was like a combination of skunk and severe cholera diarrhea. My God, it was enough to rouse me from my sleep and force me to flee my tent into the abject darkness just to escape the stench. I'm proud that even at my age, I was able to exhibit enough willpower and not vomit from the smell, but P.U. I held my breath long enough to scurry back into my tent for the lantern and my boots, and then searched the immediate area for the source of the hellish smell. No luck. Wherever the smell came from, it disappeared like a fart in the wind. Could it be some sort of swamp gas? I peeled an orange and left the rind next to my pillow to try to mask the stench's remnants, hoping I can sleep a while longer. Daybreak is still hours away. October 21st, 1969, noon. I was awoken this morning by a controlled explosion not too far from my campsite today, as they were blowing loose a thick growth of roots that were located where this Seven Seas Lagoon is supposed to be, feeling sluggish from the lack of sleep. I slept for a few more hours last night, but was awoken again when I heard my tent flapping despite there being no noticeable wind. It looked like something had burrowed under one end of the tent and dragged the orange peels in my Playboy out into the open. Glad I found it before the crew did this morning. I attempted to find info regarding the Seminole skunk ape lore. I asked the foreman if there were any Seminoles working the construction site, but all I got were 3 lily-white college graduates of Florida State University. When I clarified that I wanted to speak with actual tribe members, they laughed in my face and said good luck with that. Fortunately for me, another worker overheard me asking about Seminoles and asked me to give him a hand carrying leftover explosives to a nearby supply shed. Once there, he revealed he's part Seminole but doesn't like to advertise. I asked if he knew anything about skunk apes, and he shushed me immediately. He said the word was forbidden on the construction site, ever since a previous worker claimed he saw one running around when he arrived early one morning for his shift. And the next thing he knew, the guy disappeared, and no one really talks about him. And the next thing he knew, the guy disappeared, and no one knows what happened to him. Someone found his shattered construction helmet on the edge of the woods at the onset of the Lagoon dig. That was it. The Disney people never provided any information about what happened to him, and no one knew how to find him. Ever since then, no one mentioned skunk apes anymore. My friend couldn't talk for long, but he said all he knew about the legend of the skunk ape is it's a creature the Seminoles called Estacapkaki, which supposedly means tall man. Not especially helpful, but I suppose if I need to provide a code name for this operation, it'll be Operation Cupcake. I could really go for a good cupcake right now. I feel like they're feeding me MREs, and I'm starting to theorize the terrible smells of their aftermath. I surveyed the area where the aforementioned shattered helmet was found. If there is something hiding in the area, I won't be surprised. I identified a handful of different trees and bushes. The way they grow with each other is akin to a fortress wall. It's like the native flora is a natural warning to stay away from here. It would be easy to get lost in there if you didn't know what you were doing. Out of boredom, I asked the foreman why they're digging up all this land just to barely move it a half mile away. He pointed out it's being relocated to use as the foundation for the new Disneyland. Excuse me, I was corrected. Well, scolded is more accurate. Scolded for calling it Disneyland, when the correct name is Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. Give me a break. Walt Disney's dead and he still has egotistical balls the size of worlds. Jesus Christ, even worse, there's some talk of building the City of the Future somewhere nearby once this initial construction is complete. I personally don't know how someone could build a town of tomorrow atop a base of pure muck. Every day seems like a new battle against the elements with the rain and the heat and the humidity, not to mention the thick, overgrown flora. If I were them, I'd give up and move to a state with a solid foundation and not build atop mud. Or maybe consider changing the name to Sisyphus Land. October 21st, 1969, 4:25 p.m. I attempted some tracking in the brush after lunch, but I can't find any animal tracks. Regardless, I've started laying traps around the periphery of the worksite. Placing lima beans and orange slices on the trigger mechanisms and hope they'll lure whatever might be out there. Hopefully the flies don't eat it all up before nightfall. Gonna hit the hay at dusk so I can be ready for tonight. Once the crew leaves for the day, I'm gonna steal some supplies and rig a makeshift bunker to hunker down in. The heat's getting to me. I'm sick of constantly noticing my sweaty ass crack. October 22nd, 1969, 2:39 a.m. Holy shit. The on and off rain falling into my sheet metal ceiling was causing me to doze off in my ramshackle hunting bunker until one of the nearby traps snapped shut and the creature unleashed an ungodly howl. It was unlike any howl I'd ever heard before. It bellowed in my eardrums like an explosion, but it was purely animalistic at the same time. I sprinted towards the sound with my lantern and rifle, and I caught sight of something retreating into the brush. I fired at the creature, but I missed. Guess there's a first for everything. I'm reluctant to include this next bit of information in case anyone ever reads this hunting journal and thinks I've gone mad, but I swear I heard that creature laughing at me. I heard some sort of yuck 2 or 3 times before the return of the incessant bug chirpings. I attempted to follow the creature into the brush, but the smell was back and stronger than the night before. It was too overwhelming, and I puked up my dinner about 5 feet away from the trap. This may have been the most fortuitous regurgitation of my life, however, as when I finished and picked up the lantern, I spotted a track in the nearby mud. It was the biggest footprint I've ever seen. I had to eyeball it as I didn't have a tape measure on me, but using my own size 9 boot as a basis of comparison next to it, this track must have been at least 17 inches long, maybe 8 or 9 wide. So unless Wilt Chamberlain is taking night hikes in Central Florida, I don't think science has discovered whatever this is. I then inspected the activated trap and found remnants of fur and blood. My guess is the creature must have reached in for the food and had its arm trapped, but was able to pry the trap open again, either via strength or intelligence, or both. Can't wait to show my discovery to the crew when they arrive. Operation Cupcake is now in full effect. October 22nd, 1969, 6:17 a.m. Damn it! God damn it! I tried to preserve the findings, but the rain clouds poured open shortly after my last entry. I tried to salvage the evidence, but the strong gusts and pelting rain blew everything away in no time. There was nothing I could do to preserve the footprint I found in the mud. It's still raining now, and the only crew that has arrived were 2 demolition experts to ensure the explosives that were used yesterday didn't get ruined by the rain. They gave me weird looks when they saw me peeking up from my bunker. I may need to escalate my concealment tonight if I'm going to nab this cupcake. I'm going to catch this skunk ape, and I'm going to mount its head above my mantle. October 22nd, 1969, 7:49 p.m. The rain hasn't stopped. I've been holed up in my bunker. This is my new home. My new fancy Florida retirement home. Can't wait for the grandkids to visit. October 23rd, 1969, 3:23 p.m. The crew returned to work today, and I described what happened 2 nights ago. I told them about the pungency of the mysterious odor when it's fresh, like something not of this earth. I miss that smell now that it's gone. I need it back. I don't know how I lived my entire life without it. I could tell by the looks on their faces that they think I'd gone mad. They asked me when I was last indoors, and I told them doors are for the weak. They suggested I go rest at the local motel for a few more hours, but I told them I'm not here to sleep. I'm here to hunt. I'm on the cusp of the greatest hunting discovery of all time. Tonight's the night. I can feel it. I've devised a perfect plan. I dug out my mud hole where I would conceal myself in viscous brown muck and lie in wait for Cupcake. I'll then place 1 trap near the explosive shack, since that appears to be the driest and safest location. Once Cupcake arrives, I'll be in the perfect position to take it down with a clear shot. Destiny awaits. October 24th, 1969, 4:07 a.m. God, I hope this is legible. I'm trying to write down every detail as quickly as I can. I stripped myself of all my clothes except for my bathing trunks and my waist holster with pistol, and took my position in the mud hole with a rifle by my side, and then covered myself from head to toe. I sunk into the still moist ground from yesterday's rain. A snake slithered by and didn't even notice me. I took position right as that orange ruby sunset gave way to the stars and the blackness. Laid there on my belly observing the trap and waited. God, it was probably several hours, but it only felt like a few minutes. I felt just like a kid again, rolling around in the Upper Peninsula's muddy shores. The only thing that kept me from slipping into nostalgia was the distinct difference in the smell of the mud. Back home, it smells like dead leaves and the winds off the lake. Florida mud smells more like methane and burning car fuel. But that all gave way to that smell that I now crave. The wind was faint, but it was enough to blow that animal's scent in my direction. I observed movement in the trees. Without moving my body, I looked to the west, and then Cupcake finally appeared. It stood approximately 7 feet tall, too gangly to be a bear, but just as hairy. It was a biped, had the gait of a human with 2 hirsute arms swaying back and forth as it ambled towards the trap. Even from 100 feet away, I could see its exaggerated facial features. It had long, dangly black ears that looked like melting tar, a bulbous black nose protruding from the end of this long, flat snout that resembled an outrageous overbite, with two squarish fangs that hung off the end like stalactites. When it approached the trap and was further illuminated by the moonlight, I realized its hair was like some breeds of dogs. The creature strolled up to the trap that was covered with the remainder of my oranges and lima beans. It clapped its paws together and seemingly jumped for joy when it discovered the treats. I didn't set the spring mechanism, but the creature has memory because it picked up a nearby stick and poked at the food to make sure the trap wouldn't activate again. Once it realized the trap wouldn't spring shut again, it ravenously ate the food, then bolted towards the Bay Lake. I did my best to track it, but it was so fast that I had to pounce from my hidden vantage point and chase after it as best I could. Christ, I hadn't run like that since basic training, but I ran, rifle in hand, towards a combination of animalistic noises along the shore of the lake. When I arrived, well, this will sound insane, but I saw the skunk ape wrestling an alligator at the water's edge. The skunk ape tried to pry open the gator's mouth, but its jaws were too strong even for this mythical creature. Failing that, Cupcake hurled the gator into the lake by its tail, but the prehistoric predator quickly reemerged to continue the battle. I watched the madness unfold before me until a snake, black racer I think, crawled over my bare foot and caught me so off guard I screamed and shot it and blew its head right off. The gunshot was so unexpected and loud that it diverted Cupcake's attention away from the gator and towards me. In an instant, it sprinted over and was eye to eye with me before I could react. Its huge, oval eyes looked me up and down and immediately calculated I was not a threat. Picked up the snake's corpse and carried it back towards the gator that was waiting to continue their fight. Cupcake then whipped the gator near to death with that snake corpse. Even writing that now, I'm not sure if I believe it. Maybe I've lost my mind. No, it's not me. This state is madness. It's heat and violence blended together in a way mankind should avoid. God, I hope the evidence is still there when the crew arrives in a few hours. I took pity on the gator as it was clearly dying a slow, painful death, and I put a bullet right between its eyes. I won't be able to mount it, but at least I can add it to my list. Cupcake reacted with rage to my mercy killing, whether it was angered that it didn't get to deliver the final death blow, or it was rage caused by the gunfire. It roared louder than my gunshot. It flung the dead snake and its paws into Bay Lake and then ran towards me with the speed of a Mustang at full gallop. I relied on all my training experience to calm myself and take aim as it sprinted towards me with those giant strides. Took a breath and pulled the trigger, but it was useless. I'm pretty sure I nailed that son of a bitch, but it didn't react at all. Cupcake reached my position, grabbed me by my mud-covered shoulders, and flung me into the air. I don't know how long I was airborne or how far I flew, but it felt like an eternity. One of those flash before your eyes moments where everything slows down. I assumed I was about to die. But since you're reading this, you must know I didn't. For the first time while in Florida, I blessed the rains as the ground was still super saturated and soft enough to absorb my landing. It wasn't soft enough to keep me from getting injured and getting the wind knocked out of me, but at least I wasn't dead. The creature must have assumed I was dead because it ran straight back to where I originally placed the food scraps. My guess is Cupcake wanted to scavenge for whatever food may still be there and then retreat back to the woods. I know in hindsight that I wasn't dying, but at that moment, I wasn't so sure. I could barely move, but as I slowly made my way back towards the tent to find my emergency kit and inject the old morphine from my last deployment, I noticed my Playboy was near the shed where the explosives were being housed. There was no sign of Cupcake, no smell, no noticeable tracks, no remaining food. I figured the magazine must have blown out of my tent somehow, so I slowly trekked my way towards the shed to retrieve it. If any scientists read this, please know the skunk ape is a very clever creature. The moment I approached the Playboy, Cupcake leapt out of his hiding place and tackled me to the ground. It's the hardest I've ever been hit, and I played fullback at a Big Ten school. Stood over me and made that god-awful yuck noise again. I'm now convinced that son of a bitch was laughing at me. Cupcake picked up my rifle that was still draped across me thanks to that shoulder strap, and then snapped it in two like a twig and flung it into the darkness. Cupcake then watched me squirming in the mud and smiled. Well, that smile didn't last long enough. Unbeknownst to Cupcake, I still had that pistol holstered around my waist. I removed the pistol and tried my best to aim it at the beast. Time was of the essence, though, so as soon as I drew my gun, I unloaded my chamber as quickly as I could. I missed the creature, but I hit those explosives that were nearby and set them exploding up into the night sky. It suddenly looked like the 4th of July, and I assumed I was dying because, as I laid there in the mud, I remembered when I was 17 and Janie and I went to the local 4th of July fireworks, and I spent the whole time looking at her instead of looking up at the explosions in the sky, because that was the moment I realized I loved her. Well, while these explosions illuminated the swampy sky, I looked at that son of a bitch skunk ape and realized I hated its damn guts. But when I looked at it, I saw terror in its eyes. Instead of looking at those de facto fireworks and feeling wonder and patriotic pride, I could tell Cupcake felt fear and confusion while looking at those fiery embers raining down around us. Cupcake then bolted with its tremendous speed back into that mess of a swamp forest. I was able to make it back to my tent where I attended to my injuries as best I could. I wrote this while waiting for the painkillers to kick in. I saw where Cupcake fled into this damn Florida jungle, so I'm grabbing my backup rifle and tracking him while the trail is still hot. I should be back with the corpse by noon. Killing it and bringing back the corpse is the only way anyone will believe any of this. People deserve to know what's really going on in this swamp. Disney can try to build a fairy tale world here, but there's something monstrous residing in Florida, and it shouldn't be ignored. Operation Cupcake isn't over yet.
This was the last recorded entry in the hunting journal of Hank Handspike. He was never seen again. The Magic Kingdom, as of this recording, still has nightly fireworks, weather permitting.
The Creature from the Seven Seas Lagoon, starring Chris Ostro and featuring Redwan Khan. Written by Tom DeFreitas, with contributions from Courtney Kay and Chris Ostro. Produced by Courtney Kay. Music by John Caden. Artwork by Judd Hermans. Follow us on Twitter at Bloody Hashbrown and email us at bloodyhashbrown@gmail.com. We'll see you all next week.